Well, I'm kicking myself because I'm not playing right now. I'm playing standard bumper music. I'm not playing something worthy of my next guest. My next guest, many of you know, is a pop culture icon. Because if you were a child of a certain generation, Saturday night meant watching him on MTV with Headbangers Ball. What people don't know is that Riki Rachtman is a tremendous sports fan, both in racing, where he's host Racing Rocks, a syndicated radio show for 15 years, as well as, I know you're a big hockey fan and all that. He also, I think, started the tattoo craze. We'll ask him a little bit about that. But Riki Rachtman, I feel so cool here that you're my guest here on Tri-City Sports Now for Race Week in Bristol. But one thing, I know you're a big motorsports enthusiast. You live in North Carolina now. We were talking outside off the air about this, but you're from Hollywood. So let me ask you this. When you were in Hollywood, what was the national perception of Bristol in terms of where it fits on the NASCAR circuit?
Well, when I was in Hollywood, the biggest perception of all NASCAR was that it's like, it's just backwards and it's simple and it's this and it's that. And even, my whole time growing up in Los Angeles, I was always a fan of motorsports. I went to Ontario Motor Speedway, I went to Riverside when I was a kid. And but there's always been this perception of the South, and that it's people. You talk about Appalachia State, and people think Deliverance. And I'm like, no, people, it's not like that. But everybody just thinks the people in the South are backwards or they're slow. And the truth of the matter is, I grew up in Hollywood, lived there my whole life. I prefer people from the South any day.
Well, like I say, you were talking about this. You live right now outside of Charlotte, and now I guess I'll ask you to repeat the story. I mean, you're now one of us, if you will. Tell us about what the move from Hollywood, where you were so associated with. I mean, you own the Cat House. You were hanging with Axl Rose and all this. How did it come where you went from that culture to Charlotte, North Carolina, and motorcycle buddies?
Well, even some of the bands that were so big in Los Angeles originally came from either Seattle or came from Pennsylvania or came from somewhere, but I didn't. I came from Hollywood, so that's all I ever knew. And I do these big cross-country motorcycle rides all the time, and I fell in love with North Carolina. I've got friends that race that live in North Carolina, and I just always liked it up here. So I just said, you know what, why not? And I just, I figured, hey, I could always move back. Give it a year, I'll move back. And I've been here 2.5 years. And I just love living here. I mean, this is just the best. I've got a lake. I've got the Carolina Panthers, which I've been a fan of since they started in '95. I can go see the Charlotte Hornets. I'm a Clipper fan, but I'll go see the Hornets. Not now, of course. And we've got sports in North Carolina and in Charlotte, and the people are better in the South. It's beautiful. It's green. And, it was a big risk, and everybody, I thought that I was going to be done doing any kind of rock and roll stuff, but the truth is I moved here and I started doing more rock things, but I'm just, now I get to do my radio show at the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and it's just, I'm in awe every time I walk into that place.
That's pretty cool, doing the show from the NASCAR Hall of Fame. I got to ask you that you mentioned you're a Clippers fan and all that. As a child of Hollywood and the Lakers for so long being so more glamorous, I mean, that would have been the situation in our youths. How'd you get to be a Clippers fan? Are you that counterculture?
Because I hated the Lakers, because everybody liked the Lakers. All everybody talked about was the Lakers. Everybody talked about the Lakers. And I was like, well, I'm not like a big basketball fan, and I haven't been a fan of them that long. But the year that they got Blake Griffin, I decided, okay, I'm going to like this team because they suck and because they're not the Lakers. But then just Blake Griffin just started blowing me away, and I'm watching him. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years after I started liking him, they started winning, and then they got rid of Kobe, and then the Lakers sucked. So it just became like, oh, you Clipper bandwagon. And I'm like, well, I've actually been a Clipper fan for a while. The worst bandwagon accusation that I ever get is the Panthers. Now, when I lived in L.A., my team, as soon as they started, was always the Carolina Panthers. Had no idea I would ever move to Carolina, but I always liked them. I mean, I used to wear a Kevin Green jersey in Los Angeles when he was with the Panthers. And now, they're my team. I have a Panthers tattoo. I get to go see the Carolina Panthers play. And so to live here, have your football team here, when I was in L.A., when I grew up, we had the Raiders and we had the Rams, and but I just didn't care. I didn't have any kind of feeling for them. But the Clippers, always loved the Clippers, and now we're in the playoffs, and even though we had a bad game one, we picked it up, but it sure is hard watching games at 1 o'clock now rather than 7:30.
Anyone else except Riki Rachtman, who we're talking to, I would probably get on for calling his team we. I do that sometimes. That's the journalist in me here, Ricky. But for you, I think I'll let it pass here. You know, one of the things that I know about NASCAR is historically it's been so ingrained with the country music culture. How have you been successful in ingraining NASCAR and maybe even opening up the sport's eyes to a rock and roll culture?
You know, the funny thing is, it is true, and that is what everybody thinks of as NASCAR. And yes, country music is very big in NASCAR. And I also don't have anything. I don't like the new country, but I like all the old country, old, like, outlaw stuff. But, you know, I remember the first time, you know, when you live in Los Angeles and you're a NASCAR fan, your big dream is to go to Bristol Motor Speedway. And then when I finally went to Bristol, I was like, this is more rock and roll than anybody has any idea. And so I would take certain people to races whenever I could. And I was an oddball when I first started going to the races because people knew me from MTV, and they're like, oh, here's this guy with a 3 and a 43 tattoo. and this was when Dale was still alive. And everybody's like, you know, what is he doing at the races? And then there was the time during the Jeff Gordon era when NASCAR became so popular that everybody said, oh, you're just on a bandwagon. And, you know, I actually became friends with Dale Jr. back then, who was like, oh, I see on MTV wearing Dale Earnhardt shirts. I wonder when you were going to come to the track. And now what people don't realize is that we've got a lot of drivers that are hardcore metal fans. I mean, you know, I do driver introductions at Dover, and I'm introducing Ryan Blaney, and Ryan Blaney, who I had never met at the time, walks behind me and says, when are we going to go see Slipknot? You know,
oh, my goodness.
Oh, cool. So I took him to see Slipknot. And there's a lot of drivers that are into rock and roll, but you know, it's racing. And the beauty thing is I worked for Speed Channel for a couple of years where I was really the oddball. I was the L.A. guy with tattoos and this and that. And people wanted to kind of like, oh, God, now here's this guy getting into NASCAR. Because as NASCAR fans, we can always tell who isn't into the sport. We can always tell, like, oh, this guy's here because he's got a movie to promote. But then people started seeing me at the infield in Talladega with nothing but a couple buddies. And then people started noticing, like, this guy really likes the sport, you know, and I love the sport. I mean, I have such an incredible passion for NASCAR like most people don't. And I pay attention to every single race. And I'm only lucky that I got a job where I get to talk about some of this stuff. And if I didn't, I'd still be watching every single race. And to the point that when people talk bad about NASCAR, I get insulted. I'm like, hey, you know, that's my stuff.
I'm loving that Ryan Blaney loves Slipknot. I'm loving that right there. We're talking to Riki Rachtman on Tri-City Sports Now. But I got to ask you about this. I've always thought this was a great music area, and to be brutally honest with you, a better music area is the Tri-Cities than a sports town, in my opinion. So when you say that you didn't realize how rock and roll Bristol was until you came here, what's rock and roll about Bristol?
It's loud and it's fast and it grabs you by the back of the throat and it just shakes you around. And that's what you want. I mean, it's hard to get. I mean, when I went last year, I went to Bristol and I watched the Xfinity race and I watched Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch battle every single lap, and I could not sit down, and I was screaming and yelling the same way I would at a Slayer concert. You know, it was going nuts. I mean, I'm sorry, when I'm seeing these guys just like aggressive, and Bristol is just a mosh pit with a bunch of 39 cars in it. That's what it is. You know, and I love it.
You were talking about how in that race, you know, you were on your toes for every lap and all that. Has breaking the races down into sections created more of that when you're watching races now, Riki Rachtman, or is it just the same to you?
I think the stages that they've done with NASCAR is a brilliant idea because what it does is it gives you, you know, like 3 checkered flags. I pay attention now to see who's going to, sometimes when you watch NASCAR, you'll sit down and watch a race, and then you'll go do some laundry, and you'll sit down and watch. But now you want to see who's going to win every single stage, and everybody cares about these stages because it's going to matter so much when we hit the playoffs. So I think it's great. So I think it gives you a reason to watch at lap 40 or to watch at lap 50. If it's lap 35 and you're like, oh, I got to go get some beer at the grocery, just go, listen on the radio, come back. Now, if you know that in 10 laps they're going to throw a checkers and a caution, you're going to stay and watch that. And that's great, and we need stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff NASCAR does that doesn't work. But right now they've got some great stuff with what they're doing with the All-Star race and what they've done with the stages that I think is brilliant.
Well,
I love it. I think it's great for the sport. Some of the stuff is so complex that I don't understand it, and the beauty is I don't care. If I've been covering this sport for 15 years, I can't understand the wave-around rule, and I don't care. I know nothing about working on cars, but I know I like that driver, and I know I like that manufacturer, and that's all you need. I mean, really.
I will tell you right there, the people of NASCAR just loved you, Ricky, when they said,
they don't.
Well, if you just said, I know nothing about working on cars, but you have such enthusiasm for the sport, Ricky, I mean, that's the person that the sport needs to bring in. And I guess I need to ask you, why do you think that, ratings are down? I mean, this race will not sell out at Bristol. Why do you think NASCAR has lost some popularity over the last 10 years?
I'll tell you, thank you very much for the compliments. In all honesty, I was a little bit bitter towards NASCAR because I've been trying to get a job in this sport while I was on MTV. Mm-hmm. And they always went a different direction. They always said, well, we want a younger demographics. We want this, we that. And that was when I was a younger demographic. I still know the younger demographics better than most of the people that they have coming in. I have such a passion for the sport. I know how to sell the sport. But, hey, I'm a fan right now, and I'm glad I'm working at Bristol. I get to do the Food City anniversary party. But I think everything is changing right now, and it is pathetic. People aren't going to concerts. People aren't buying records. We have this thing, and I hate to put all the blame on social media and phones, but people just don't want to get up and go see a movie. They want it Netflix. If you ever saw the Disney or Pixar movie WALL-E, at the end, people are fat, sitting in a chair with everything fed to them and, driverless cars. I mean, come on. When we were kids, all we wanted to do was get a driver's license and drive. Kids don't care about that anymore. They don't want to take the effort to go to a race. We need live interaction, and we don't do it anymore. And everything is down. I think NASCAR, the stages, is going to help. I think if people think that, now this might piss people off, if people think that Monster Energy drink is going to bring a whole bunch of new fans into the sport, I don't think it is. I think Monster Energy wants to get all old fans drinking Monster. But if we get a good and by the way, I love Monster. I always drink Monster, even if I don't work for them. But I think we need to figure out a way to make it a little bit more rock and roll. I know that Darlington's throwback race they're doing in Labor Day is it's an 80s 90s theme. I'm going to host it. Bret Michaels is playing, so that's kind of a cool, fun rock and roll thing that they're going to do. And I just think we need, what we need to do is we need to build up the personalities of the drivers, because I can't watch a sporting event if I don't like or hate somebody.
You mentioned that. Is one of the problems, so to speak, is that Jimmy Johnson is so dominant, nice guy, but that's all there is with Jimmy Johnson. Is that a problem?
That's what everybody says. The truth is, it's not. I mean, everybody says Jimmy Johnson is so vanilla, and I've always found Jimmy Johnson to be a really great guy with a great personality. I think that, and there's nothing wrong with just having somebody that's really, really great at the sport. He doesn't need to be a character if that's not who he is. But there are people that are characters, and I don't think we need to go professional wrestling on it, but we need the people to love and the people to hate. I think what Bristol Motor Speedway does by having driver introductions, by a song that they pick and they get to come out, that shows a little bit of personality. When J.J. Yaley comes out with his daughter dressed as Axl Rose, people are like, I don't know who that guy is, but I like him. You know, if Ricky Stenhouse Jr. comes out to a great country song, maybe you don't know who Ricky is, but you're going to like him because he likes that same song. We need to build the personalities of the driver, and I may be way off, but I don't think anybody gives a crap about aero packages and downforce, but I think they would care that this guy's mad at this guy because this guy bumped him last year at Bristol, so this guy's got a bone to pick, or that, you know, Brad Keselowski and Kyle Busch are still mad at each other, or whatever. That's what we need to bring. We can't make it happen. We can't fake rivalries, but let's work with that stuff because that's what we care about, you know? I mean, you know, if I'm always going to root for the Panthers, but just because I'm not a big Odell Beckham fan, I'll enjoy rooting against the Denver Broncos.
I love what you're saying, and to be honest with you, I've had many NASCAR guests on, and what can I say? I think that you're onto something here with building up the personalities and such. Rick, I've got a break to take, about 4 minutes. Can you stay on through the break and we can go to 1 o'clock, or are you busy right there? All right. We're talking to Riki Rachtman, yes, the former host of Headbangers Ball, which, by the way, celebrated its 30th anniversary yesterday.
Wow.
So we're already, isn't that true? I believe the 30th.
Yesterday, the Headbangers Ball celebrated its 30th anniversary, but I hosted it from 90 to 95. I mean, it was basically kind of my show, but there were a couple hosts for 3 years before me.
Yeah, Mark Goodman, Adam Curry. I remember those days and such. I remember actually your first show and the last one he did in 1989, where they did retrospective of the heavy metal era of the 80s. And that still, I mean, is just, well, what can you say? When it's, I think, one of the great periods of rock and roll music, and something that we're never going to see again, unfortunately. Well,
never.
Maybe you can correct me on that, or you can give me some ideas. Riki Rachtman here on Tri-City Sports Now. Where else you going to get this? Hey, we're cool now. Tri-City Sports Now continues with the legend after this.
The Dan Bradford Show, weekdays from 9 to noon on 1420 NBC Sports Radio, Tri-Cities.
Ponder Auto Repair, where we fix anything but a broken heart. Ponder Auto Repair services European, Asian, as well as all domestic, along with sport utility vehicles and light trucks. We're celebrating 35 years of service, and as your Napa Auto Care Center, we guarantee our repairs nationwide for 3 years or 36,000 miles. Call Ponder Auto Repair at 928-3849. Mention peace of mind and receive a discount on your repairs at Ponder Auto Repair, 915 West Market Street in Johnson City.
Then that's it so far.
Good proposal, Alex.
Yeah, smart.
Thanks. And of course, you're all welcome to add your thoughts. Trish?
Yes?
Any ideas that could make it better?
Oh, yeah, a little cup of molten cheese for dipping.
Huh?
Oh, we're not talking about soft-baked pretzels, are we?
No.
Auntie Anne's Pretzel Perfect. Big and soft. Great with cinnamon sugar or garlic butter. Different and delicious. Auntie Anne's Food Court, the mall at Johnson City, and the Kingsport Town Center.
Go ahead, honey. Pick out another.
We have vanilla and chocolate.
That's it?
Vanilla and chocolate.
Daddy, what kind of place is this?
Should have gone to Blackbird Bakery, home of made-from-scratch deliciousness. From donuts to specialty coffee to cakes and more. Voted best bakery in Virginia in 2016. Blackbird Bakery on Piedmont in downtown Bristol. Open 24 hours a day, Monday through Saturday.
If your company doesn't have a responsive IT person, do you know what could happen?
Hey, your computer down?
Yeah, can't get on the network.
What should we do?
Chill out in the lunchroom and play gin rummy?
That seems like an extremely unproductive use of valuable at-work office time. But can't do anything else.
You could be paying staff to play gin rummy.
Customizing and providing IT solutions for business and residential. Unbound Digital, with locations in Johnson City and Kingsport to serve you. Phone 423-335-2461.
Back here on Tri-City Sports Now, you've been hearing that bumper music because I have been derelict of my duties. I've been talking to Riki Rachtman for myself instead of with you, my Tri-City Sports Now audience. It is race week. He's a big NASCAR fan, host of a radio program, Racing Rocks, which can be heard syndicated throughout the country. Used to be heard in this market, not now.
I think it is.
Well, here's the deal. I went online to look at the affiliate, and I then tuned in at the time, and either somebody running the board was derelict or it wasn't on. 2-hour show, and at the time, because I wanted to, prepare and such, and it wasn't on the station listed on your website. So I want to...
Something's got to be done about that.
Well, yeah, that's why we're going to talk to your people after this interview here.
And by the way, I am going to be at Bristol this weekend. Food City, it's the 25th anniversary of the Food City 500, and Food City's kind of doing a party Saturday, and I'm going to be hosting that. So, the idea, I've worked for Dover for many years. I'm going to be working at Darlington. But it's pretty cool that Bristol Motor Speedway said, hey, can you work for us this weekend, considering Bristol was, one of those places that I always wanted to go to.
Why do you think it is that I keep hearing how special Bristol is? Now, I realize you can see the entire race from your seat in the track, unlike, say, Daytona. But is that what it is, or is there something else about Bristol that makes it such a favorite?
I've been to every NASCAR track except for Kentucky, and I've also been to every NASCAR track before anybody was there. And when you walk into Bristol Motor Speedway and you're standing in the inside of it, in the infield, you really have no grasp on how big it is. It's almost, it's overwhelming how many seats are there and how high those grandstands go up. I was there on the sold-out August races. And it is just, it's so many people that you lose touch. I've been to concerts that have had that many people, and it looks like a lot of people, but these people are in such a small area, and the grandstands just go so high, and it's unlike any other place.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I can remember seeing old photographs when it had 12,000 people, and it was a bull ring. Let me ask you that. What is your preference? Do you prefer the super speedways, the Talladegas, the Daytonas, or the bull rings, the Martinsvilles, the Bristols?
I love going to Bristol. I love going to Dover. I love going to Darlington. I'm not saying it because I'm working all three of those tracks this year. I don't work at Martinsville. I like going to Martinsville. I like short track racing. I like to be able to see everything. Of course, Talladega is something everybody should experience, and Talladega is a blast, and Daytona is too, but I just prefer to see, I would rather go to the short, smaller tracks than go to 1.5 miles any day. I like going to Dover because you can see everything at Dover, and the same thing goes for Bristol. And Darlington's it's just tough. It's just a tough,
sure.
It's a track too tough to tame, and it is. Those are the tracks that I like to go to. I like to be able to see everything. And there's a lot of tracks you go to and you sit there and you can't see the whole track, and it's not the same experience. And that's what I prefer. And now that I live in North Carolina, I've just recently started going to the local short tracks, and the local where all the cars' numbers are put on by duct tape.
Yeah,
that's fun. That is my new real passion, just to people watch and to go to the races.
Oh yeah, I've been to those Charger Series in the pits with friends who drive cars, and that's a total experience. Plus the race is a little shorter, so there isn't. You mentioned earlier that going to get a 6-pack of beer in lap 231 or so, you don't have that in a 15-lap race.
Even with the stages, I think the races are too long.
Interesting. Now I know.
Even with the stages, the races are too long. I think that maybe we make it a whole day thing, and we put in a truck race, make the truck races even shorter. And the truck races are short. I think the cup races are a little bit too long, and I know everybody's going to disagree with me on that one. But I like, I think the stages really have helped because you can't just kind of sit there and just go, because there's stuff happening, and I don't need stuff to be happening every lap because there really is. And NASCAR keeps on doing everything they can. When you think about it, the concept of trying to break up pack racing and trying to make it so there's line, that's a science that I can't even understand, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So.
No, but as I said, and you mentioned this before, and I've had writers of the New York Times on here, and we've talked about, well, why aren't so many people coming on? And you mentioned driverless cars, the complexity of an engine with fuel injectors and not a carburetor. People don't work on the car. But for someone like you who says, you know what, I mean, I'm taking my car to Jiffy Lube, but you're such a passionate fan. Like I said, you're the person that NASCAR has to reach in now and in the future. We've been talking to Riki Rachtman, and I mean, this for me has just been so exciting. He's coming to Bristol, and I should say with the show, or what is your? I've only got 30 seconds left here, so can you tell us where you'll be in Bristol?
I have to plug something really important.
Sure.
I'm riding my motorcycle through all 48 states, raising money for cystic fibrosis. And I just want to tell the website because you can follow me and tell me places to go. And it's rickysride.com, RIKISRIDE.com, Ricky's Ride. I'm also on Twitter, Riki Rachtman. I'm going to Bristol Motor Speedway to help celebrate Food City's 25-year involvement with the Food City 500. And I'm going to be at the track most of the time just being a fan and having fun. So if you guys see me, please come up and say hi.
That's a deal. Riki Rachtman, Racing Rocks. Tri-City Sports Now comes back after this.